we want to get to a couple different interesting things regarding noon concepts. And I've heard somebody talking about this on the radio today, so let me address this. Redeemed from the curse of the law. Actually, hold that thought for a minute. I'm going to address one other thing. Linda made this point. I was talking about when you can't find Yod-He-Yod in the dictionary. What do? She made the point that if you go to page 255, you'll find the word Yod-He. And it means a place for. Then you go to page 148, and you find Hey Yod, which means here is. So you put those together, and you get here is a place for. So what it says is, let there be Yod-He-Yod, and there was. But what you can technically see is, here is a place for. So the other way of rendering it is the creator, the designer, the creator, made something and revealed it, right? The artist or the singer writes a song and he makes it and revealed it. And you could say, how does that mean here is a place for? Again, one of the problems is, if you try to be very, very literal with these letters, you can see certain things, but that's not all you can see. So now if we put together what we've been given, let there be, and there was, here is a place for, the working hand of the artist has put on display what he has made and then claims it as his own. Put all those things together, and what do you see? The creator making what he has made. All those things can be wrapped up in that. But what you have to do is take each one of these little pieces and, like chewing the cud. The kosher animals were the ones that chewed the cud and had the split hooves. And so you have to sit there and think, it's like, how do these things fit together? So what I'm saying is that we have a problem. The problem is we go to the different translations and we have different renderings, because to get a publication copyright, you must change it, even if somebody else already has the best rendition. You must change it to get a copyright. Therefore, who has the best rendition? We don't even know. Even the people that claim to know this language come up with so many different ideas. The proof is nobody really knows. And the idea of this Mishkan pattern is to give us a structure to go back to. I'm suggesting that the Mishkan pattern itself is like Yahweh's closet. Certain things fit the paradigm, the model of being outside the fence, which is a predicament, like a smudge in your life, like the darkness, like being in bondage, like getting a ticket from a cop, or having your power shut off by the PGE, or dropping a hammer on your toe, or something that you notice the poverty of your circumstances, and like the Beatitude that said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, or theirs is the kingdom of Yahweh. Here is respite. Here is relief. The big white fence, drawn as the Het, Tet, and Yod in the blue column here, is in direct reference to the Vav Zion, the man slain, or the place of the guy who's dealing with the weapon or the cutting outside the fence. See, there's different ways to read the pattern. But the pattern is, there's a predicament outside the fence, you're offered the fence. You come to the fence, which is the kingdom of Yahweh. You say, yes, I'd like that. Light compared to darkness, life compared to death. You step inside with unconditional offering, except you must be decontaminated. You can't bring your contamination into the kingdom. You've got to be decontaminated outside. So the picture of the Zion and the Vav is the place of the red heifer sacrifice. If you were in contact with the dead, you couldn't come into the Mishkan. The priest took the red heifer, burned it, took the ashes, mixed it up, and anointed or smeared it or put it on you, decontaminated. Well, that's how you make soap with lye, with ashes, right? So it's a form of cleansing on the outside so that you are decontaminated so you can come in. The picture of Yeshua being crucified outside is a picture of being decontaminated so that you can enter the kingdom. But being decontaminated doesn't mean you've done anything right or wrong yet to warrant that, other than choosing to come to the kingdom of Yahweh. But once you choose to come to the kingdom and you step in, now you've got the altar of sacrifice, which is a place of processing, of chopping up, throwing some things this way and some things that way. What do you do with it? Certain things don't belong in the kingdom. Certain things are the protocols of the kingdom. The Shabbat, if you read through the Old Testament, every time Yahweh mentions the Shabbat, it's a really big deal. It's not the only issue, but it's a really big deal. And if you want to know how big of a deal it is, if you listen to what the Seventh-day Adventists say, they've done a lot of research on the matter. Go read their books. Don't think, oh, they're a cult, I'm not going to listen to them. They've done research on the significance of the Sabbath day and who it was which conspired, conspiracy theory here, who it was that conspired to take away the sanctity, the regard, the kadoshness of the Sabbath day and gave us instead a perversion, which is the Sunday regard. Go to the Seventh-day Adventists. They'll show you the literature from ancient history of where this whole business came from. If you want to know about Christmas and Easter, you could check out Michael Rood's work, and you can also check out Jim Staley's work, and you can also go to your neighborhood Jehovah's Witnesses. They'll be happy to tell you where the Christmas and Easter stuff came from. You can also look on the internet, and it's all over the place. There's no excuse for not having information. But now the excuse is going to the coffin lamed, the place of the altar of the sacrifices, like, I'm not so sure I want to do this now. I'm in the kingdom, aren't I? Didn't I come to be decontaminated because of a choice? And didn't I step inside the gate? But now I want to stand here and process and negotiate how much I have to give up? If you spend your entire rest of your life negotiating with Yahweh, did he really mean it? How bad might be the circumstances if I just don't go along with the program? Now I got to weigh and measure. What'll happen if I do break the Shabbat? What'll happen if I happen like bacon on my cheeseburgers? Is he really going to throw a lightning bolt at me, noon me, if I eat bacon? Now we're leveraging, evaluating, wheeling and dealing. Let's make a deal with Yahweh, because we don't know what's going to happen if we do or we don't. But what he said, Memnoon, I'm promising you, whatever you do regarding the instructions, Kaf Lamed, Memnoon, like this bowl. Well, the bowl is a bowl of water, isn't it? But if we look at the pictures of the bowl, literally the word for laver there is something round. It might even be a round barbecue grill. Because we already had a barbecue grill. It was the altar of sacrifice. The Hebrew word, if you look in the dictionary, it's something round. Well, if you go to the Mongolian grill, which is the name of a certain restaurant, you go and you pick, in a big display case, you pick the items that you want. And you might say, I'm not eating pork, so I'm not eating shellfish, so I'm not going to take those items. But I'm going to put these things on a plate, and then you come and you give them to the guy. And he goes to this big, round, hot stone, and he dumps them there, and he cooks them up. Whatever it was that you put in that dish, remember, you are what you eat. Whatever he put in that dish, he's going to then put on the round thing, and then you're going to eat it, you're going to consume it, and all the molecules of that stuff you put in there becomes your body. The interesting thing about the Mongolian grill is you can go there and say, hey, I'm not going to eat pork, so I'm going to pick these things, and then you give them to the guy, and he comes over here, but they dump everybody's stuff in the same round bowl, and everybody else's juices of all the stuff that you intentionally decided not to eat flows into yours, and you're still going to become what those guys chose because you're in proximity to them at the same time and place, even though you didn't really want that stuff. And then if you're going to scrutinize and say, but I really don't want that stuff because I believe it's toxic, not just an instruction not to, it's toxic, poison, counterproductive, and will do harm, probably physically and maybe mentally, and who knows about spiritually, but it's going to do a degenerate work on my being. And the last time I went there and I saw all the juices flowing, it's like, I can't come here anymore. It's not worth the cost. See, if you count the cost, you have to consider three things. What's it cost? So the word sefer is to count. What's it cost? Determine what it's going to cost you. Then say, well, but what's it worth? That's a whole other assessment, but you're suffering. You're suffering to determine the cost. You're suffering to determine the worth. But then you have another question. If you go ahead and do this, is what you got worth what it cost you? Which is to say, well, what's it cost? Well, if you say, not to pick on anybody in particular, but let's just go for the bacon and the cheeseburger, for that was a pretty hard one to give up, okay? What's it going to cost? I don't know. It's going to cost me. I'm not going to be able to enjoy my hamburgers as much. That's what it's going to cost me. What's it worth? I'm simply playing into the kingdom design, what Yahweh said his people should do. As a matter of fact, Yahweh said his people should not eat roadkill. Do not eat what dies of itself. If you're walking through the woods and you say, hey, there's a deer carcass. Well, perfectly good meat. I'm just going to cut off the parts that the rats have chewed on, and I'm going to take it home and eat it. There's a story that just came to my mind. I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm going to say this because I'm not going to be taking the Lord's name in vain. I'm not going to profane Yahweh's name. But there was a fellow by the name of Jesus Bob. Imagine having a name. Everybody calls you Jesus Bob. It's like, why'd they call him Jesus Bob? Because this guy would eat roadkill. And some of the stuff that he would dig up and eat, it was so foul that people would look at him and go, Jesus Bob! God! It was pretty foul. Now again, I'm not trying to, I'm not using Yeshua's name in vain. I'm using an ism, Jesus Bob. It's like, why would somebody say that? Because even the heathen, pagans, ungodly know you shouldn't eat certain things. But Yahweh says, my people are to be set apart, eat nothing that dies of itself. However, you can pick it up and sell it to one of the goyim. Imagine that. The people that are, let the dead bury the dead, remember Yeshua said something about that? These guys are already dead. If you find something polluted and you can make a buck, the Torah actually says you can sell it to these guys because they just don't care. They're dead anyway. They're dying anyway. Dead man walking anyway. But he says that you are my people, and I'm telling you the pinnacle. Do not eat. As a matter of fact, one reason why, from what I've heard, one reason why the Jews don't go hunting is because if you see a deer and go bam, you don't know if that deer is sick or not. But if you raise it from the flock and you tend it, you can make sure that it's the best one of the flock. I'm going to eat that. What regard do we use for our own benefit? Yahweh said, I want you guys to use the best regard, so I'm giving you the protocols of the best way to conduct life on the face of the earth. Are we doing it? Redeemed from the curse of the law. What comes to mind? As a Christian, it's like the law is a curse. It all depends on what you do with this little word of. The word of, remember, is a mem, which can mean of, like this is where, we are of America, right? But it can also mean from. It can all mean a place of, the place that you're from. The water is the mem, the environment where the fish noons from. The noon is of the water environment, but you might say the caterpillar was of the terrestrial area until it goes through the chrysalis, and now it's going to be of the air environment. If it's the curse of the law, if you can read it in a way of saying, well, that means the law is the curse. Because the of is the connection, is the vav. See that? The vav, the connecting yoke. the curse, which is the law. The New Testament model is that we have been redeemed or saved from the curse, which is the law. Which means, from this way of thinking, that when Yahweh gave Israel the law, known as the Torah, typically regarded, it was a curse that he was giving or putting on, burdening his own people with a curse. That's the way you read it. And so the Christian New Testament model is we have been rescued, because this word redeemed is the word spelled Shin Ayin, Shah, and if you put a Yod He Vav in front of it, it's Yeshua, Yod He Vav Shin Ayin, or if you put a Yod Shin Vav Ayin, it's pronounced Yeshua. That's where you get Y apostrophe S-H-U-A. Just for what it's worth, I've heard that people say that this is a rabbinical trick, calling him Yeshua because it's an acronym for let his name be cursed, let his name be never mentioned. That's another business. But my point is, the reason for why I spell it Yod He Vav Shin Ayin, hence the picture and the emblem, is because it's the Creator, the Torah, the man connected to El Shaddai's judgment. Day of Atonement, Ayin, the day that we were atoned for, rescued and delivered from all our sins, which we have repented of. Is it the law that's a curse that Yahweh gave his people? No. He said, this law is your life. It's the greatest blessing that the universe has ever seen, was be for the Creator to reveal himself to humankind. He said, no one has ever seen my face and lived. The word face is spelled Pei, Nun, Yod, Pene, or sometimes there's a mem at the end, Penim. But as we've discussed before, the Pei is a mouth, and the Nun is the living thing which emerges out of that other environment, and Yod is the hand that works. What is it that jumps out of your mouth and causes things to happen? Words. So for Yahweh to reveal his face, his Pene, is in his words. He gave us his words, which is the greatest blessing, which is the closest he could come to revealing his face to his own people. For us to disregard his Sabbath day or his festivals or his instructions is literally to spit in his face or turn away and say, yeah, well, whatever. I'm going to watch TV instead of watching your face. Would anybody do that on purpose? Especially when we sing wonderful songs of how I long to see your face. I'm suggesting that we're not even doing this on purpose. We don't know what they're doing. What did Yeshua say on the cross? Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. Our thinking has gotten scrambled. How do you reorganize your thinking? Going back to the Torah. The word for learning Hebrew also means to be cured of lunacy. Imagine that. It's one of the words in the dictionary. I can't remember which one it is offhand, but you can stumble across it if you read in the dictionary, and you'll find a certain word that says to be restored to health and cured from lunacy. And it has to do with learning how to read Yahweh's words. To be restored to health and cured from lunacy. You see, if we say the curse is the law, it doesn't mean that. But if we say of the law, then you might say, what did the law say is the curse? The curse that Yahweh gave in his law was that if you don't do what he says, all these evil, bad, horrible, miserable things will come upon you. To be redeemed from the curse of the law means somehow he will take away all those horrible, bad things that are rightfully going to come upon you. So if we go back to the Mem, Nun, Samic concept, the Samic is like this. If a Nun is a sprout, like a sprout of a bean sprout or a radish sprout or a wheatgrass sprout, it sprouts. It's just the beginning. It's like just being born. If the 49 days of counting Shavuot are counting and then 50, boom, it's the sprout. That's not a full-grown adult. The full-grown adult is the model of the Samic. Like I said, the dragonfly picture, right? The wings and the body, that almost looks like the Samic. I'm trying to show you pictures to stick in your mind. The Nun is the sprout out of the Mem. It's just the birthing. Remember there's the parable of the adversary came into the field and sowed evil seeds, tares. And they said, should we pluck these up? And he says, you can't tell what they are when they're young. Wait till they mature. You can make the distinction at the time of harvest. We will gather up all the tares first and then gather the wheat. So the picture of the rapture where all the believers are taken off and leaving all the bad people to unbelievers to sit there and get nailed is kind of the inverse of that picture. So some people question the rapture being like, well, gee, maybe the tares will be evacuated off the face of the earth first, leaving everybody else who's the believers, people of Yahweh, on the face of the earth. So you have to go back and look at the model and say, well, what story are we believing? Who told us what? Why? Did somebody have an agenda? Or did somebody make a mistake? Or did Yahweh intentionally allow it to be corrupted to fulfill his word, which he said, because Israel, I gave you my best words, and you didn't want them. You spit on them. You used them as something to wipe your feet on before you go into your own house. You used my word, describing my house, to wipe your feet on before you went into your own house. Imagine that. Because you did that, I'm going to take away the meanings of my words, and I'm going to hide them and conceal them. I'm going to hide my face and just see what will become of you. And if you want to know where I find this stuff, read Deuteronomy, read Isaiah, read Jeremiah, read Ezekiel. In fact, you can read the entire Old Testament, because, as we said before, the entire message is in every letter. And as you'll notice, if you go back and you listen to the different letters that we've been doing each week, you'll see it's kind of the same message every time. Because the entire message is embedded in every single letter, but each letter brings out a slightly different aspect of the message. But that's why the same message keeps going back. What's the message? What did he say? How do we do it? And if we squabble about if we have to do it, you can stand with others that are standing in the same place wondering if we should do it. But there's others who say, look, we've already made that decision. Yes, we should do it. Yes, we want to do it. Now the question is, how do we do it? And that question of how do we do it is where it comes in to say, well, what should you do on the Shabbat? Okay, we're going to keep Shabbat Saturday, not Sunday. Okay, we got that. Yes, it means not our own pleasure and not working. And does it mean you can go to a store and buy Starbucks? Does it mean you can go to the grocery store? Does it mean you can, whatever it is you want to do? Can you go play soccer? Can you go for a walk in the woods? Can you watch TV? I'm not trying to give you answers. I'm saying those are questions you can discuss amongst yourself, your family, your friends. That's droshing. And as Jamie said, this other fellow by the name of Bet Midrash, it's simply the letter Mem in front of the word drosh. And drosh means to seek out. Mem is the place of seeking out. So Bet means house. So it's the house where you sit and discuss. That's Bet Midrash. I'm trying to show you how these letters and words fit together. So when you hear the word Midrash, it's like, oh, that's Mem, Dalet, Resh, Shin, Darash, Dalet, Resh, Vav, Shin. And you can start putting these words together as you recognize these words in the scriptures. I'm trying to fit these things. Anyway, the point is, if you have Kaf and Lamed, remember I showed you the picture at the end of the day last week where there was the furrows like the Kaf, like the furrows in the field, and the Lamed is the hoe that you're hoeing in the seeds, and then the Mem is the seed gestating in the earth and developing and growing and then nooning, sprouting out and growing into a samek to bear fruit, which ayin is then going to be judged by the husbandman of the vineyard, which is Yahweh. Yeshua said, stay in me, I'm the vine, you're the branches. So there's a model saying, what exactly is the Nun? Is the Nun a seed which grows in a garden that you're tending? Or is the Nun the word in your heart which you then have to nurture? Or is the Nun your own being, which you will become when you hop out of the chrysalis unto the eternal destiny? Well, it's all those things. There's different models. There's different paradigms, all within the same structure of the alphabet. And you could probably come up with some other ones. You might have these thoughts. It's like, well, that's not what I said. I just gave you 3 models, and there's other models. But I'm showing you that there's these parables embedded within the structure of the alphabetic sequence. But to go back to the redeemed from the curse of the law, if you've thought you've tended your garden well, You've gone to church for 50 years. You've learned the Bible stories. You've memorized the New Testament. You've religiously kept Sunday sacred. Sing praises on Christmas and Easter. And all of a sudden you realize that's not what Yahweh said. And you go, what? How'd I get tares in my garden that I was so careful about? And now I've got some rotten fruit. And the law says, the Torah says, if you mix pagan idolatry with the kadosh things, Yahweh hates it and you're under a curse. But I didn't do it on purpose. Yahweh, can you please redeem me from the curse which the law has now told me about? Because I betrayed your truth, I am under the burden of the curse for my own behavior, because the law says anybody who does that is under the curse. Yeshua has redeemed us from that curse. The law is not the curse. The law tells us where the curse is. If you have a sign that says minefield, we're in Israel and there's this place going up to this mountain by the Sea of Galilee, and it says danger minefield. If you step over this line, a little bit of barbed wire, it was not a very good fence. You could have easily just stepped right over it. If you step over this, the blood is on your own head. If you step over this, you might get blown up with landmines. That sign that said danger minefield, you see there's this verse in, I think it's in Corinthians. I looked at it a while ago. It's written in Greek, and it said that, for we know that the letter kills. I heard somebody preaching this, and I thought, wait a minute. That's not true. These letters are life. Not only do they give us life, they are life, because these letters are Yahweh's face, and He is nothing but life. The word het yod, remember, can be interpreted, het yod, as this is the word chai, which is life. It's my fence, or everything in this box is mine. My business, my kingdom, is everything regarding life, is what Yahweh's saying, but we just say, oh, that's the word life. But if Yahweh says everything in this box, in this treasure box, is my stuff, and my stuff is life stuff, then how can the New Testament say, well, we know that the letter kills? What a load of stuff. Which letters kill? Which letters kill? The ones that are spun to contradict the Torah? Oh, those letters can kill. But the letters don't kill, because every letter comes out of these letters. It's not the letter that kills, it's the interpretation of the letter which kills. These letters, which are life, tells us where life is and where death is. So I looked at this verse written in Greek, and I looked at the Strong's Concordance and looked at the Greek words and letters, and it was the word grammaton, which is the word for letter, but it also means written things. And it says the administration of death. The administration of death? Well, the president and the Congress, the school principal, that's the administration. It's the administration office. What's the administration office? The administration office makes things work properly, tells you how things function. You might say the Detroit, where they make cars and engines, is the administration office. And if you want your car to operate, you want to look at the instruction manual that the administration office gave you. The letters, the words, the diagrams that the administration office gives you, like, here's a minefield, don't cross this line right here, we're going to put a sign here. That sign is the administration of death. It tells you where death is. And what the verse in Corinthians was actually saying is that the letters we were given as the administration of death tells us where death is, so we don't go there. Death is working on the Shabbat. Death is eating profane foods that will defile your being. Death is disgracing, discarding, and disdaining, disgracing, and having an offense of Yahweh's word. He says, any nephesh, any soul which has a disdain for my word, it's an abomination, and even their prayers are an offense to Yahweh's ears. no matter how much you think you love him, if you disdain these words of Hebrew, which are Yahweh's own personal face, he doesn't want to hear your prayers. He doesn't even want to hear them. That's not something we've been taught. The curse of the law that we've been redeemed from that says, I didn't even know I've offended him. When the sprout came up, it looked good. The tare sprout looked just as good as the wheat sprout. But Yahweh says, anything not based on my word is going to turn into a foul harvest, which will corrupt you, just like putting the food in the thing at Mongolian Grill and said, you sure you want this to become you? You sure you want this to become the substance of your flesh that you will now wear for the next 10 years or however long the molecules of what you've just put in this one meal, what you will wear hanging off your bones? And it will form the chemicals of your brain, allowing you to think, are you sure you want this? Okay, I'm about to put it in. Are you sure? No, take that out. Take that out. I don't want that thing in there. Oh, you're going to then be redeemed from what would have been your certain fate had you done that. And you might say, well, but I've already done it. I've already ingested all this stuff. I believe that what this verse is saying is that we have the right, the privilege, the prerogative to come to him and say, will you please unplant my garden? Will you redeem me from the curse that the law has now informed me about, that my teachers didn't know about, didn't tell me about, or that I ignorantly or even willfully chose to disregard? My mind, present tense, right now says, Yahweh, please redeem me from the curse that law that you established has ordained that I suffer because I planted it. And the great thing about this is that we're not stuck with the stuff we've already planted. We can go to Yahweh and says, will you please unplant my garden? But imagine this. If all through your life you come into the kingdom and say, oh, you tell me those are things that will be productive and things that will not be productive. I'm going to choose to do the unproductive things and say, please heal me. Then I'm going to do the unproductive. I'm going to read, oh, yes, you said this is what's right and this is what's not right. This is what you said to do, this is what you said not to do. Never mind, I'm going to do the things against what you said. Please forgive me. And then I'm going to come back and learn some more and say, I don't care. Oh, well, you please heal me and cleanse me from the I don't care. And you can spend your whole life doing that. And I'm not saying you're not saved, but what are you? Remember, the Israelites got in trouble for bitterness and for grumbling and complaining about physical things. Are we being bitter, grumbling, and complaining about the things that he said to do? The point is, I'm not saying you can't be forgiven or you're going to get kicked out of the kingdom, but now there's other models. Remember, Yeshua gave the parable of the 10 bridesmaids, and the bridegroom coming, and 5 of them get in and 5 of them don't. It's like, which one of those was the bride? Well, if they were bridesmaids, none of them were the bride. Who was the bride? He gave another parable of the invited guests. The guy's putting on a banquet. He invites his friends. They're all too busy. He says, go out and compel others to come in. And a few came, and he said, look, go find the strangers. The guy's holding signs at the edge of the freeway. Tell them there's food in here. Drag them in. My house will be full. Were they the bride? There's these different models. There's these different paradigms. And the question is, who's the bride of Christ? Who's the bride of Christ? Well, wait a minute. You read back in the Old Testament, the ketubah was the 10 commandments. You know what a ketubah is? It's a writing. It's a pre-nuptial agreement. Yahweh made a pre-nuptial agreement, the 10 commandments, on Mount Sinai with the 12 tribes of Israel that just came out of Egypt, some of which were sojourners in Gur, people that were hanging around with them that came out of Egypt. He started picking them off. Korah and a few others got swallowed up by the earth because they didn't want to go along with the program. But the point is, he made a prenuptial agreement. He then later says, I believe it's in Ezekiel and Hosea that he's talking about he married, as it were, 2 women that were sisters. He calls one Ephraim and the other one Yehuda. Well, if Yahweh has these 2 married women, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, and he said he divorced the northern kingdom, but he didn't divorce the southern kingdom, then who's the bride of Christ? Somebody else? Is Yahweh married to Israel and Yehuda, and somehow Jesus is going to marry a bunch of Gentiles who don't have to acknowledge the Torah at all? Meanwhile, he divorced the northern kingdom because they disregarded the ketubah, the prenuptial agreements. But he said that he would call them back and re-wed them. But who's the bride of Christ? Something doesn't fit. The model doesn't fit. We go back to the Mishkan pattern. We got to go back to the letters and say, where do we hang these concepts? Do we put them on a hanger? Do we put them on a shelf? Do we put them in a drawer? If he gave us these concepts and said, this is the plumb line, this is my face revealed, we should be able to take every verse, every word, every concept in the Scriptures, Old Testament and New, and say, where does it fit the pattern? And like I said, there's different ways to fit the pattern, but if you get a guy like Melchizedek who has no genealogy, does that mean he had no mother and father? Or does that mean we have no record of his genealogy? You look at the book of Jasher and it says, oh, Melchizedek was Shem. We know it's Shem. His father was Noah. He came on the flood. He came from before the flood. That's when he was born and raised. But then why would Hebrews say he has no genealogy? Noah was his genealogy, and we got a whole list of the guys that came before Noah. What is it talking about? And then if it says, I have made you priest forever after the order of Melchizedek, if you know Hebrew, you look at that word order, and it doesn't mean order. It might mean after the heart attitude. But we think order, oh, that's like this secret group, this clan that now gets to have this special privilege of a certain type of priesthood. And the Levitical priesthood was done away with. But then you read in the Tanakh, in the Torah, and it says the covenant with the Levites is forever, never to be done away with. So now you have the Jews say, okay, you're telling me I can read in the Tanakh, and it says that the covenant that Yahweh, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, made with the Levites is a perpetual priesthood that would not be taken away. And then I go to the book of Hebrews, or the epistle written to the Hebrews, and it says it's done away with, and now there's another one? There's a discrepancy. Which one should we believe? I'm not suggesting which one we should believe, but what I'm saying is we have to know where the plumb line, where the standard of reference is. If you go back to Yod, Hey, Yod, and it means here's a place for what? Aleph, Vav, Resh. What's Aleph, Vav, Resh? You can pick that apart. And Aleph means a plan or a purpose. Vav, Resh, Vav man, Resh man. Those are the two letters that represent men. Vav man is kind of like the common man. Resh man is an exalted man. Vav man is the type of man that Yeshua came camouflaged as, who was then put to the weapon. So a Vav man is subject to death. And a Resh man is like the type, the archetype, the type of him coming back that nobody can touch, that is unkillable, that will be unto eternity, a whole different disposition. That's why in the chart here it says Vav caterpillar type Ben Yosef, and Resh is the butterfly type Ben David, the son of David, the son of Joseph, the two picture types of the Mashiach. There's pictures, there's messages in the pictures. And if we can appropriate these things, then we have to say, what's Aleph, Vav, Resh? It's the word or. It's translated light. Let there be light. He or. And you could go, the plan for the Vav man and Resh man, or the Vav man to become Resh man, or here's the plan for the caterpillar type to become a butterfly type. That's like a little code embedded in the message for light. But remember, the light wasn't actually made sun, moon, and stars until day 4. And this was day 1. So what was the light? It wasn't photons of light emanating from the solar disk, the solar orb in the sky. What I'm trying to say is that you have to look at these things and then start mentally processing. If you don't want to do this mentally processing, you don't have to. I'm not suggesting that you're good or bad or better or less if you don't. But this is the stuff of Hebrew. To sit here and look at words and pick apart the letters and say, what could it possibly mean? So let's go on to something else. The Nun is the 14th letter, but it's the number 50. If there's more than 50 verses in a particular chapter, you'll see on the stones, you'll see a little Nun off to the side. That means it's verse 50. And if it's Nun Aleph, that means 51. But the word Nun Aleph here, Nun Aleph, you look in the dictionary, it means please, or I pray thee. It's like, will you please do something? That's Nun Aleph. Let's dissect the Nun Aleph a little bit. The Nun is to impart, and the Aleph is to start or to initiate a plan or a purpose. So it's like, I'm going to, like, if you walked up to an old jalopy, a Model T or something, and you turn the crank, you're nooning the engine so that you can begin the motor with its power cycle. It's kind of like Nun Aleph, but that's the word please. When you ask Yahweh, please, you're initiating a contact to make something happen. If you ask another person, please, you're doing one thing, all of a sudden you're locking, you're engaging, you're making this connection, and you're asking them to engage your life. Nun Aleph, life and an initiation of power. See, so what I'm saying is the way you can read these letters is to see each letter as a picture, and then read in the dictionary, and then look at other words that start with Nun Aleph. For example, Nun Aleph Mem. If you read in the scriptures Nun Aleph Mem, quite often in the Tanakh, not so much the Torah, it says Nam Yahweh. Nun Aleph Mem Yod He Vav He. And it's translated the word of the Lord, or the word of Hashem. Nam, like Vietnam, N-A-M, is translated as word. But the word Dabir, Dalet Bet Resh's word, and the word Amer means to speak or to say, or a speech or an utterance. As we discussed before, Aleph Mem Resh also has something to do with something taking off and flying, kind of like there's a picture of like the antlers of an elk. These fine, high words. Resh is an exalted man. Aleph is the first, Mem, but Mem is to bring forth something and reveal something. So these fine, high words that are spoken, it reminds me of Shakespeare, or maybe something Solomon would say. It was maybe an Amer. But what's a Dabir? If you look in the dictionary under Dabir, it also says Dabir means a pasture or a cattle drover. A cattle drover is one who drives the cattle on, but he's in the back. But it also means that which is in the future, out in front of you. And it also means like a ship pulling a barge or a raft of your luggage. You say, well, how can it be something behind you and yet in front of you? At the end of the day, that's behind you. The end of the day, or what's in front of you, is the pasture, if you're the cow being, or the cattle being driven on. So what's in front of you is at the end of the day, which is the pasture that you're going to go to. So the drover, the cattle drover, who's behind you, is a Dabir. The word Dabir has to do with something following, like the barge, like pulling a trailer. When he says the word Debarim, that's adding a Yod Mem to the word Dabir, and it's the word for Deuteronomy, which is actually words. But Dabir is more than a word. It's a word, a matter, a thing, an affair, a business, an occupation, something, anything. It's just stuff. But it's something with something following. What's following? The blessing or the curse. So Amer is basically like these fine, high words, eloquent sayings. Debarim is words with something following, the blessing of the curse. Nam, though it's translated words, look what it is this engaging action. And then we talked about Aleph Mem last week being the word for mother, womb, metropolis, city, matriarch, the one who starts something happening. And I get this picture of an industrial center, a factory, a place where you bring in the resources and it's processed and putting out a product. Well, the product that gets put out is a Nun, but the factory itself, see, Nun might jump out, and hence you get this word Nun, Aleph, Mem, Nun. Well, what's a Nun, Aleph, Mem, Nun? Well, Aleph, Mem, Nun is the word Amen, or so be it. And it means steadfast, sure, confidence, stability. But what it really means is nooning, like a lightning bolt. I'm going to now make Aleph Mem produce. A womb which is impregnated is now going to develop until the thing jumps out. Nun, Aleph Mem, Nun. And what jumps out, you can count on it, is going to be the product of what was put in. What is nooned this way is going to be nooned that way. It's the same picture of what Yahweh said about His Word. What you do regarding His Word is what's going to come back on you. We think in terms of temporal mortality. Okay, well, drink this, eat that, and you become this or that. And it's like, oh, I can deal with it. I'll just take some extra pharmaceuticals later and maybe, inoculate myself against the pain and the grief and the this and that. But think, what if it was unto eternity? Oh, come on, that's a little bit far-fetched. Well, if you look at the modern letters, remember the Sophite letters, the noon is shaped like this, and the Sophite letter is opened up. And like I said, if you picture the Sophite letters like a trap door opened unto eternity, like, oh, there's no bottom, a bottomless hole. Because we're standing on the earth, and if the earth wasn't here, we'd have outer space, the other side of the Milky Way is down there, not just China, on the other side of the planet. The letters Kaf, Mem, Nun, Pei, these are the letters of the Sophites, they're right here. Kaf, Mem, Nun, Pei, Zadi are the 5 letters that are Sophites. Remember, the Mem was closed, and all the other letters are like the trapdoor open unto eternity. Is this a picture of him saying, these matters have eternal regard? What you Mem, you will be nooning forever. You better regard the Kaf, because the Kaf is what goes into the Mem. Remember, the things you till into the ground is what's going to Mem unto eternal life. An eternal dimension of who you are. Pay, regard these words. The fellowship of the flocks, the believers, the Kadoshim, the Kadosh ones. Another interesting thing about noon is where we get the word noon, high noon. High noon, when the sun is at its zenith. It's a turning point. Well, Kaf and Lamed are the middle. That's a turning point. Why would noon sound like a turning point? It's also where we get the word 9, because these are, they came out of Latin and Greek, but they all come out of Hebrew. 9, well, that's like Tet, which is a full basket. There's something about noon which is full. Well, the 14th day of the month is the full moon, which is the center of the system of how the moon's working. It's a big round disc, like a big round full Tet letter, a round full basket, fully covered. The word for silver, which is Kaf Samek Resh, means fully covered. It can mean fully white, like the full moon, or fully dark, which is the new moon. It's the same word, Kosef, Kaf Samek Pei. But it has to do with fullness. So even though we say, well, the full basket is a 9 and this other thing, I'm showing you these concepts embedded. The other interesting thing about the Paleo is that some people draw the noon like this. A seed with a sprout coming out of it. That's the same exact picture of a Zadi, which is more like a stick with a branch coming out of it. And this is almost like a noon shape coming out. There's a relationship between the concept of a noon sprouting and a Zadi sprouting. Just like there's a relationship between a Tav having a T sound and a Tet having a T sound, and a Sheen having a S sound, and a Samek having an S sound, the difference in them is what the letters mean. So when you get a guy like the leader of Libya, Gaddafi, I've seen it spelled with a Q, a K, and a G, because in English it just doesn't matter. It's phonetic. But if you want to know what it matters, you can't spell it in English. You got to go back to, what, Arabic? I don't know what the Libyans speak. But if you go back to Hebrew, it all depends on how they spell the letter. This word, how you spell the word with what letters? This word mem nun, literally, if you look in the dictionary, it can be a prefix, but it means beyond. This and then, so you're here, see a picture of a threshold? You work on a construction crew and you've got a certain phase done, and you go, now, you just crossed the threshold. Well, the threshold is a dalet. But there's these concepts. Mem nun is a threshold. If you go back to the Mishkan pattern itself, the fence, if it lines up with Pesach, and then you've got the festival of unleavened bread, like the separating leaven from unleavened, like the barbecue grill, and then you've got the Mem Nun, which is Shavuot, which is counting 49, and then 50 jumps out of it. What that means is that Shavuot is one festival counting 50 days. Todd Bennett, we've discussed this before. Todd Bennett recognizes this, and I don't know how many other people have ever said this, but it puts the psalmic at the place of the menorah, which is the fourth day, Yom Teruah, the fourth festival. What it means is that the spring festivals are mapped to the pattern of the things in the outer section of the Mishkan. You've got the Mishkan fence, you've got the altar of sacrifice, and the laver outside, exterior. The spring festivals, Pesach, Chag Matzot, Shavuot. Then you've got the summer month. And then inside the set-apart place, the Kodesh place, the holy place, sanctified, set apart, you've got the fall festivals. Menorah, table of showbread, altar of incense, psalmic, ayin, pei. The fourth day, sun, moon, and stars put in the sky. The fifth day, like the scales, fish go down, birds go up, like the tipping of the scales, Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, heaven and hell. And then you've got Sukkot, the pei, the mouth, the day that he created animals and man for fellowship on the face of the earth together. And then you've got the set-apart day, the one everybody always ignores, which is Shemini Atzeret, in the place of the Sabbath day, the Kadosh Kodashim, the place of the Ark of the Covenant. This particular model says that Shemini Atzeret is the seventh festival. Everywhere else I've ever looked, Sukkot's the seventh festival. And that there's two festivals with Shavuot. It's the day where they wave the sheaf, the omer, on the first day, and then they wait 50 days, and then they wave the two loaves. If that is two festivals, it throws off this reckoning. The reason I'm making a point of this is because a lot of people maybe have heard these words and it doesn't really matter what I say, this or that. This is the pattern. If somebody else disagrees with this pattern or wants to argue it or discuss it, hey, that's fine. Let's discuss it. Let's drosh about it. But what this pattern says is Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, and then Shemini Atzeret are the four fall festivals. And there's three festivals like the Mishkan, the big white fence, the altar of sacrifice, and the laver in the spring. It's a pattern. If there's a message in the pattern and you got the wrong pattern, like everybody's been saying, well, Pesach and Chag Matzot, unleavened bread, one is the other and the other is one. But it's like there's one day, the 14th day. The 14th day was Passover. And then there was a 7-day festival. The inverse of that is that there's a 7-day festival of Sukkot and 1 day of Shemini Atzeret. So there's the 1 day of Passover and the 7 days of unleavened bread. There's 7 days of Sukkot and 1 day of Shemini Atzeret. Either this is a pattern or it's not. Either it means something or it's not. Either this is right or it's not. The question is, if this is true, and this stuff means something, and this is the key to unlocking the meaning of these Hebrew words so that we who have no rabbi, and we who don't want to follow the Vatican or the elders, the teachers, the leaders of the Protestant faith, because we don't believe what they've been telling us, because they've been caught red-handed lying, we're on our own to determine these words. And it means your eternal destiny, how you interpret these words, whether it's this way or that way, or maybe it just doesn't matter. But if it does matter, the reason for learning this stuff is to engineer your own eternity for maximum return, maximum gain. So if you notice a song, and let's sing it right here at the end, think about the words. A blessed noon restart is the phrase for the noon. Noon is an impartation. It's like going to the athletic locker room and getting your gear, getting your equipment, which you will then use as you psalmic. It's like going to the locker room and getting the ball, getting your shoulder pads and all if you're playing football, getting the right shoes so that you can get out and go and do the psalmicking, because he's going to be ironing what you psalmic and give you the rewards unto eternity set before you based on what you do. The Christian model is, hey, it's all been done for you. You don't have to do anything. So there's a bunch of people just floating around not doing anything, and yet he's going to be what? Giving them merited rewards for what we've done? That's what Yeshua said. That's not what is preached, but that's what he said. If you go back and read the scriptures, even in the New Testament. Anyway, we're right up again at the end. Let's sing the song. And again, this is to re-put the meanings of the words structured, sephared together. Aleph is the plan that Abba purposed in his heart. Bet is the container of all he would impart. Gimel is the sent one to retrieve us home again, to enter through the door, the Dalet. Hey, look, he's the Vav, man. Cut off, perfect yet, the Zion one of sevenness. Selah. Chet is for our safekeeping, sealed by Tet like a wedding ring. Yod, his hand, who formed my hand to hold on to his kaf, which is Torah, Torah, Torah. Our regard reveals the heart, Lamading, so that from Mem a blessed noon restart. Samechai and Pei, Shema, Shomer, together one. Zadi stands alone, though all Israel shall become. After Kuf, our noble Resh, exalted in the sky. Shin, our shining Elioni, Yahweh El Shaddai. The Aleph Tav accomplished and completed as he said, the one word left untranslated, the one we all reject. Still the offer yet remains Chaim Ed Olam, for the simple Brit of love and death is Aleph Bet, his song, Ha Shir Shirim.